So, the word sustain has undergone many meaning changes. But if you look at its roots, it means that which upholds. Yeah? That which sustains is that which upholds. Now, what's the meaning of dharma? Dharma, that which upholds and holds together. So, the right action and right livelihood is the only sustainable system. But it's got so distorted because, I've been in this work for 50 years. So I've seen the word environment come into governance, I've seen the word sustain come. And I've had to deal with situations, for example, where I got a leaked strategy document from Monsanto. They don't send it directly, some of their investors send it to me. And it was fascinating. It was about, we've owned the seed, now we should own the water. And they said this will be totally sustainable because it will sustain our profits. So, from ecology and sustainability of nature and society, the meaning for many has shifted into sustaining profits and markets, which are anyway non-sustainable. So you cannot sustain something non-sustainable. Yeah? My own life in ecology, I grew up in the Himalayan forest, but my life as an ecological activist began with the Chipko movement. And it's from the women I learned what true sustainability is. Yeah? Because they depended on the forests for their livelihoods. And unlike the typical discussion where ecology and economy are not just two different compartments, they are in competing compartments. Constantly we are told development and environment, development versus environment. I tell the journalists I will not even entertain that question. Because true development must be according to ecological laws. Otherwise, it's anti systems that support anything. Could be a forestry system, it could be an agriculture system, it could be a water system, it could be any system. So, it's in a very recent years that the idea of nature as dead matter and raw material to be exploited has emerged. It's not very old. So there's a very good book I would ask you all to read. It's called The Development Dictionary. It was initiated by Ivan Illich, a big thinker of our times, and Wolfgang Sachs is the editor. Wolfgang and Ivan were at that time at Penn State University. And they called on many of us to write essays on the key words of development. So I was asked to work on resources because I work on environment. And the word resource means that which regenerates on its own. That's what original meaning of. But by the time of the Industrial Revolution, resource became that which is raw material for industry and gets value only through that role. That's the first step of non-sustainability, where self-organized living systems are reduced to merely inputs for an industrial process. And the two things, because I've done so many studies, the two things they have never measured is what does that extraction do to the system as a whole, which is what this non-sustainability becomes the key factor. But the second element is whenever you extract and try and create the illusion you're doing something better and producing more, another side effect. So one side effect is ecological disruption. The other side effect is pollution. Always. These two will always go hand in hand. India's word for climate change is not climate change happening in the atmosphere alone. It's Jal Vayu Parivartan. I would say Jal Prithvi Vayu Parivartan, because it's the change in the biosphere which changes the water system, the climate system, which then changes the stability. Yeah? I have a book called Soil Not Oil, which I wrote in the lead up to Copenhagen, because I tried to make sense Or why were we only talking about numbers in the stratosphere and not talking about the right action on the land? Because I've seen too many disasters. 1999, the Orissa super cyclone. 2013, the Uttarakhand disaster in Kedarnath. 2021, another disaster in Uttarakhand. It was always climate extremes aggravated by how we had destroyed the land. Yeah? So in a way, the cushion of the land, the biosphere, the biodiversity, when that's destroyed, that's when you get the devastation. The same forest can bear higher rainfall if it is diverse, it has natural, it has all levels of species, the herbs, the humus in the soil, the diversity of trees which break the rain. But when you turn it into a monoculture for commercial extraction, then even a slight change in rain will cause a flood. It'll cause a drought. So, because most of you are from the United States, you'll have noticed how the wildfires are growing. And they're always associated directly to climate change. No one talks about the fact that every one of those forests in Canada, in the United States, is being sprayed by glyphosate, Roundup. Now, what does Roundup do? It basically kills the plant. It's used as a herbicide because it kills the plants. It's also used as a desiccant to dry up plants. Now, you've got this amazing forest, which is green, and it has all these layers of diversity that protect the water and the soil. And you just leave these stands of pine or eucalyptus or whatever you want to harvest for commercial use, you're going to get floods, you're going to get drought. That's what the women of Chipko woke up to. 1972, there was a horrible flood in the river, in the tributary of the Ganga called the Alaknanda. The Ganges has 4 tributaries, and I say hats off to our ancestors who made temples at the source of our rivers. All the 4 dhams are at the source of the Ganges and its tributaries. Bhagirathi, Yamunotri, the Bhagirathi is Gangotri, Yamunotri, Mandakini is where Kedarnath is, which then joins Alaknanda, and Alaknanda is beyond, it starts beyond Badrinath. And they all start with glaciers. All of them start with glaciers. And the glaciers are receding. We have a book called Climate Change at the Third Pole that has a lot of both scientific data as well as participatory research by communities, particularly in the Himalaya, because the third pole is the Himalaya. The first pole is, the northern pole, the southern pole, and the third pole is the Himalaya. But those 2 poles don't support human life the way this pole does. This pole supports half of humanity for water. Half of humanity. Yeah? So when we think of sustainability in the Indian context, I think we can't afford to ignore the ecological civilization which is right now being destroyed. I'm not saying it's there. Forests are being cut ferociously. Right now, 2 days ago, approval was given for a GMO mustard, which we'd stopped in 2016. But, I say the poison cartel doesn't stop. Nor do we. We continue to do the right thing to uphold. So this book, Staying Alive, has a story of Chipko, but the changes and the changes that we have witnessed, as well as the role women have played. And I can go into more detail on another day on why I got into agriculture and the whole issue of the Green Revolution. This book I wrote for the United Nations after the 84 disaster in Punjab. And that's when I came across this amazing text. It's written by the person who was sent by the British Empire to improve Indian agriculture. Albert Howard was his name, 1905. And he arrived in Pusa, Bihar, and he says the soils are fertile, there are lots of insects, but there's no pest damage. So I'm going to make the pest and the peasant my professor. And this is a story you should tell in Guyana, because in a way, in effect, once the slavery was abolished, then indentured labor from India became the substitute. And when you look at South Africa, you look at the Caribbean, it's all peasants who were taken for indentured labor and who now are the population. And I'm so happy you want to teach the community Hindi. In fact, the Guyana government wants me to come and train them in the shift to organic farming. And I'm trying to look for a window when I will go. So Albert Howard, then studying from the peasant, which is social civilizational knowledge, and the pest, which is nature, he learned two principles. The principle, the core principle of sustainability and ecology, which is diversity. No system that is sustainable will be a monoculture. Monocultures are non-sustainable, whether in society or in nature. And the second principle, which to me is key, the law of return. You can't just keep taking. If you keep taking soil fertility from the soil, sooner or later you will create dead soils. You can't keep taking the genetic wealth of a seed without ever allowing it to replenish. You will have not only seed famine, which is the social side, but you will have the destruction of the diversity that supports life. And the seed, as I've learned, I think you might have been introduced why I created Navdanya. And if you have more questions, I'm happy to share. But I want to end my opening remarks with a deep thinking from Indian philosophy, which is not guiding the world or India too much just now. But this was, there's a text called the Isho Upanishad. It's very tight, very short. And the first para says, the universe is the creation of the supreme power, meant for the benefit of all creation, not just humans, but every being, the butterflies, the earthworms. Each individual life form must therefore learn to enjoy the benefits by forming a part of the system as a whole. That's sustainability, upholding the system. Let not any one species encroach on other rights. And taking more than your share, this Upanishad says, a selfish man overutilizing the resources of nature to satisfy his own ever-increasing demands is nothing but a thief. So consumerism, extractivism is basically theft. And this is what inspired Tagore to write that all of the universe is creative and for the enjoyment of all, and the exploitation by none. And Gandhi created this very, very powerful single line of sustainability. The earth has enough for everyone's needs, but not for a few people's greed. This is the distillation of this text. So to me, that's sustainability.